Society of Frankston very kindly came to the school at 8:30 to show the grade 4 children views of the night sky through telescopes. The response from children and parents was magnificent, over 100 in attendance. The following is a report compiled by the children of the event. Well done, grade 4. Special thanks to Ray Flanagan for organising the event. And this is the children's letter. On Tuesday night we went to our school oval to see some planets, moons, meteorites and stars. All the grade 4s came to peer through the telescopes that were provided by the Frankston Astronomical Society. The only planet we saw was Jupiter because Venus had already set and Mars was hidden behind the trees. We also saw through the telescopes 4 of Jupiter's 16 moons. Some people saw the Jewel Box. This was a constellation of colourful stars near the Southern Cross. Others were able to see Orion's Belt, a nearby galaxy and various nebula. Many thanks to the Frankston Astronomy Club for bringing their powerful telescopes along and helping the grade 4s understand more about the universe. And it finishes off in brackets, and thanks for letting us stay up late.
Thanks very much for that, Tony. Good. Really clear. I really appreciate it. Right, well now Bob Heale is going to give us a talk about the stars that are around at the moment, or that what you will see in forthcoming nights. So I'll now hand over to Bob. Thanks very much. Oh, he's also got a few other comments to make about his talk last month on the telescopes. That's right, I'll leave it to Bob. Thanks, Bob.
Oh no, that's all right over there. Yeah, I just put a pin on there.
A couple of seats down the front here.
Bruce writes up some really good star notes, so I'm going to use those. There is no need for me to add to them. They're good. Want to go over the south sky and the north sky, just the simple objects, and I'll mix it with what we saw and what I sort of observed people sort of talking about or having hassles with at the last observing night. Bruce has mentioned looking due south, which is what this is here. You've got the constellation Puppis, fairly high. It's a bit of a difficult constellation to study because it's moving near the zenith, but there are some obvious objects in it. And one of them he's mentioned is L2 Puppis, a variable star. There are lots of open clusters in it, M46, another one NGC2438. You really do need an atlas to find those. The difficulty, these circular charts or hemispherical charts are not perfect in that as you start to look for objects using this chart near the zenith, you get distortion. And you've really got to go to another chart to move around a bit clearer. It's okay within the inner area, but once you use these charts on the boundary up there, not greatly reliable. Another constellation he mentioned was Carina here. Many people were looking at this area of the sky last Saturday night. Now, I'll come back to that area in a minute. I'll just go over this briefly. Within Carina, there are lots and lots of things which I've got a little chart especially for you next week. I mean, not next week, next sort of transparency. You've got the Southern Cross here, he's mentioned that. In particular, Bruce has said that alpha, beta and gamma are all double or multiple stars. And I wasn't aware of this. The stars of gamma form a small right angle triangle. I must sort of check that out myself. Many people looked at the jewel box, which is just below Beta Crucis. So that's just down there, roughly. I think most people know what it is, but we'll come back to that later on. He's mentioned the coal sack, which is just a touch below the jewel box in that area there. He's mentioned the constellation Centaurus. I think it might be better if I go over here. It's a bit too small to work with. With respect to the constellation Centaurus, he's saying that you should have a look at Alpha Centauri here, which is an equal component double. You can go up to Beta and then move up here through Epsilon, and you can locate Omega Centauri, which is a globular there. If you move a bit to the left, you'll see a split galaxy, but you need telescope A for that one. But Omega is no problems, even with the eye. Piece of cake. That just about covers the southern sky with respect to the notes Bruce made up. All of those are easy objects. Now, this chart is available to people if you want it, and you can quite easily use the notes that Bruce has made up and find those with the chart. Looking north, Bruce has mentioned the constellation Orion, which is just starting to dip here. We can still see it reasonably, but another month and I think it'll be gone. Many people of the observing night saw M42, the middle fuzzy star of the handle of the pot. That was terrific. He's mentioned Alpha Orionis, or Betelgeuse, the red variable star down here. Going back to that, I don't know why. He's mentioned Rigel, which is a blue-white supergiant star up there. He mentions Taurus, but on the March chart for about mid-month, it's really going below the horizon, so we probably have to miss that out. Of interest about a month ago is Castor and Pollux. I think, Bruce, you mentioned Castor was the one that you split with your telescope. That's a terrific region. There's planetary nebula in there, but you do need a telescope for it. And that just about covers it with respect to the notes and that chart. Now, the only couple of things that I noticed some people had difficulty with was the difference between the diamond cross. I may be barking up the wrong tree, but I'll say what I'm going to say anyway. People at the observing night, some people were getting mixed up between what the Southern Cross is, which is obviously there, where the false cross is, and that is a region between two constellations, and it's this cross here. If you go out on a night where it's just sort of mid-twilight and you don't see the fainter stars, you can pick up these shapes very easily. The false cross is between the constellation of Bella and Carina. It's mistaken by some as that. There's also a diamond cross, and that's marked here. And some people were getting mixed up in trying to locate what we call the Southern Pleiades, Five of Diamonds or whatever, which is the actual spot there, and perhaps this will sort of clear it up. So, diamond cross, false cross, Southern Cross, and that's just about it. Whether that's helpful or not remains to be seen. It should be. Now, with respect to planets, Bruce has covered that very well. We're not really endowed with much at the moment. At sunset, I think you still see Venus close to setting. I think Mercury's gone. Jupiter's in the sky. You can't miss it. Look straight north and it stares out like a sore thumb. And that really just about covers it. You won't see Saturn or Mars or Uranus or Neptune because they're coming up in constellations in the early morning. Okay, now, when I gave the talk last month, one thing I felt a little bit guilty about, I guess it occurs when you're sort of giving a slightly longer bit of talking, you forget things, and I forgot or didn't mention strongly enough two things, and because we're getting different members coming through, I think I might just go over two things. Now I'm going to sort of put my neck on the line with this, but I don't really care much. Just going over the telescope types very briefly, manufacturers are basically producing, I think, 4 sorts of telescopes. The refractor, the Newtonian reflector, that's got lenses in it completely. Mirror and lens, and the Schmidt-Cassegrain, a combination of mirror and lens. The refractor comes in three forms. The El Cheapo one from department stores, Kmart, Myers, those sort of stores. Don't buy them for anyone. A second one is the more quality, longer refractor on a heavy tripod, usually a wooden tripod, and they are specialised for planetary use. And actually one turned up the viewing night, and I never got a chance to have a look at it, but I'm hoping it comes back next time. And that's supposed to give really good views of the planets. But that telescope will not give you as good a view of the stars, etc. The third type of refractor is probably out of the range of most of us, unless we're millionaires, and that's a fluorite refractor, which has a shorter focal ratio, and it's also on a good tripod, but its focal ratio is much shorter, but the lenses in it are highly corrected for colour, and most of the colour is knocked out. They are expensive and they're good value, but the only refractors you should touch are the fluorite ones, if you're retired and you've got lots of money, or the long focus refractor for planetary work. Forget the rest. Now, with respect to the Newtonian reflector, it's got a few hassles. It does need to be cleaned regularly, but that doesn't mean you clean it every week. It's probably the most popular. This can come in 2 forms. It can come as a Dobsonian telescope, or that's on a low mount. I haven't got anything that sort of shows one of those, really. Oh yeah, I have it, yeah. There we go. I mean, there's no high technology down below here, because with this sort of aperture, you just cannot help but see terrific views of objects. The disadvantages are here, that it's subject to air disturbance there, but the point is that a person who buys this sort of telescope wants portability, so they can put it together on the spot. So you can't have it both ways. But they are becoming very popular. You might argue that, okay, it hasn't got an equatorial mount, but a person who uses this can't really go wrong in seeing objects in the sky, or they know their sky, and they don't need technology to help them out. Right, moving on, the Schmidt-Cassegrain. This is good for medium to high magnification work. It is not as good as the others, for example that, on low magnification work. There is a problem with this, in that, and I forgot to mention this last week, I know within our group this problem occurs, and that's the dewing up of the corrector plate at the front here. Now, To finish off, I did not say what I should have said about this pros and cons thing at the last meeting. Now this is a summary from Astronomy, a magazine, it's fairly popular. Okay, the refractor, that's the long tube one. The advantages, the disadvantages. Now, small apertures, limited light gathering power. Large apertures exhibit chromatic aberration. Basically, what I said before holds. You get a long tube one for planetary work, or you get a fluorite one if you can afford it. You don't touch anything else. Okay, the equatorial Newtonian. It can be bulky and heavy. Agreed. But if you want good views, you take it with you. Mirrors require adjustment. Not terribly frequent. Mirror surfaces are exposed and can get dirty. Well, you clean them. Dobsonian. Now, the optical quality in these is a compromise. I don't necessarily agree with that. You can get a decent mirror if you are prepared to pay the price for a good one in a Dobsonian. The Dobsonian mount does not track the stars, but as I said before, if you know your stars, you know your sky, you don't need it. Mirror collimation, critical in fast F ratio models. That means that if the F ratio is going down to 4 or 5, you've got to watch the collimation. It's something that you can cope with yourself. You can get into control of it. It's very popular. The Schmidt-Cassegrains, outperformed by specialised telescopes for planetary refractors, the above ones, and long-focused Newtonians, and for deep sky observing. They are outperformed by them. Large Dobsonians, for example. The corrector plate readily attracts dew. Now, that's basically it. Said my piece. Thank you, Bruce.
Well, thank you very much for all that, Bob. And I'm sure after all that you'll be better equipped to go out and view the skies. Now, David Murray would like to say something.
First thing is, if anybody's interested in the Society of Supernova Search, Hunting or Finding, I'd be interested in talking with them. It's a specialised type of field that I'm going to get into in the next couple of years, and if anybody's interested, they want to sort of help out or work together in doing this, can they talk to me about it? And the other thing is, if anybody's interested in buying a 6-inch reflector on an equatorial mount, come and see me. That's it.
Thank you, David. Have you got a price on it, or is that to be negotiated?
Negotiated.
Okay, fair enough. Right. Now, I think Steve Malone, who very kindly went home to pick up a video recorder, I think he's got something to tell us too. Ask us about.
Yep. I want to make certain everybody returns what they have by way of sold butts for the raffle and the money for same, because I've got to pass in a report tomorrow, plus any monies and that available for to the convener. So that's one thing that's very, very important. Secondly, I would like to have some assistance during the period of April the 29th to the 3rd at the Mornington Environment Week. Any of you Mornington people, it's your own shire, is putting on, in conjunction with the Education Department, a week there where the kids can go in and they can see all sorts of stands and that in through the show. You probably know more about it than I do, except that I was there last year and spent 5 days there with some of the friends to help me. So I'd like to get some help this year again on Mornington Environment Week. That's what we posted. There's one other little note here that I've got next weekend, next Saturday night, we've got a viewing night again, as you all know. And during that viewing night, if anybody is interested, asteroid Palace is coming through at about approximately 6.7 magnitude, and it will be on the April 1950 Nortons. Its position will be 10 hours 42 and 5 degrees north of the equator. So in other words, it's going to be a reasonably easy object to see in binoculars or small telescopes. Would I be correct in saying that, Bruce? It's somewhere around about 10 o'clock in the evening, probably a bit earlier and a bit later. So it's that by the way, is just coming into the bottom section of Leo from sextants. In other words, it's below the ecliptic slightly, and it's across from Regulus, somewhere around about 5 to 8 degrees southwest of Regulus. That'll give you an idea of roughly where it is. So it's right in, virtually in the centre of our viewing area. Those are the main things that I have to do, but I would stress very much that we need to get the raffle cleaned up this month. I've got more tickets to sell, and if you feel that you can't sell any more tickets, those that haven't taken any yet, I would like to say, right, how about buying a few, because we've only gone halfway with our selling, and we want to other people, if we can't sell them, other people can, because they're screaming for tickets at the present time.
Just remind them how much the society gets from each ticket.
Well, each ticket that we sell, the tickets are $2 each, and we, as a society, get $1.50 return on all the tickets we sell. So it's easy fundraising for us, really. So if you can't sell any, come and see me and buy a few on the way out tonight, please. And we'll get rid of some that way. If you're not selling tickets, well, those that aren't selling tickets, maybe you can see your way clear to buying a few. There's something else that may be of interest, Bruce. That's where I got the information about this. This is this Guy Otwell's calendar, astronomical calendar. I think I've showed it once or twice before. Over the years I've had it pass through from friends in Alice Springs who get it through from America direct. Now in that there's all sorts of information, great heaps of it, on comets, the planets, all the rest of it on the ordinary star charts. Mainly it is designed for the northern hemisphere, but it can, with a little bit of judicious juggling, suit very well for our own hemisphere here. So if anybody's interested in having a quick look at that at a later stage.
Could that be passed around, perhaps?
It could be. I pull all the loose rubbish and notes out of it. All the fivers and tenors. And we'll receive it back, and plenty of goodwill as far as tickets go, please, before the night's out.
Thank you. Well now, I know we've had one or two people who've come in since we passed the attendance book and the address list around. Steve, for a start, I think there are a few off the back too. Perhaps you can take it down. We've got an address list that we want to update, so if there are any new people or any people who find their address is not correct, would they just like to correct it on the typed list? And the other book is just to write your name in, so we've got an attendance record for the night, please. I think there might be a few up the back, Steve.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, well, that means looking up there, so
Right.
you've got to get someone to hook it up to my flight.
Yeah, right.
Huh?
So it's attendance.
Yes.
Well, perhaps Laurie could be hooking it up while we get underway. Right, is there anyone else who wanted to have anything to say at this stage? We've covered all the items, I think. Right, well, the main talk for tonight falls to me, and it's one Steve, right? Okay. So tonight I'll be talking about the annular solar eclipse that occurred on Wednesday the 16th of January, and I'll be showing you quite a few slides of the actual event as I saw it from Flinders Island. I also have a number of slides I was lucky enough to pick up from Ian Sullivan. I mentioned Ian's name earlier. He's the director of the demonstrator section in the ASF, and Ian went over to northern Tasmania. He was over near Devonport for the eclipse, and he got some excellent shots as well, as you'll see. So I've got quite a few slides from Ian as well. But basically, as far as I was concerned, the reason I went to Flinders Island was that, as you'll see on the map shortly, Flinders Island was close to the northern limit of the annular eclipse went through Flinders Island, and if you're near either the limits, either northern or southern limits, you can observe what's called Bailey's beads, and I'll be showing those to you shortly. And if you're able to take accurate timings of Bailey's beads at both northern and southern limits, because the details of the moon, the diameter of the moon and the surface markings of the moon are very well known around the limb of the moon, it is possible to get a very accurate check on the diameter of the sun. And there have been various theories that have said well, the sun is either shrinking or it's oscillating or who knows what. And one way to prove whether it's varying in diameter is to actually measure it. And there are all sorts of problems in trying to measure the diameter of the sun. But one way that it can be done is during an eclipse when the moon, whose diameter we know quite accurately, covers the sun. So the eclipse can be used for that purpose. So that was the reason I went over to Flinders Island. And there are actually four of us who observed from different sites on Flinders Island. One of them was David Heale from the Canberra Astronomical Society, and he was really the main one behind it all because David has done a lot of this sort of work in past eclipses. And there were two other people, Jim Blanksby and Pat Larkin, and then myself. So there were four of us all together. The other two were from the ASV, and we tried to time the events. In fact, we did time the events using tape recorder and time signals from the time service on BNG, and you'll hear some of that later. So I think for a start I'll put a few of the overheads on to give a bit of the background, and then we'll run through some slides. We'll be running the video through later on. Yeah.
Whether he'll know which one is which. You're right, Pete, are you? You're not turn on,
We'll get it. Well, this particular eclipse, the path of the eclipse went across southwestern tip of Western Australia, and then across right across the Great Australian Bight, just missed the coast of Victoria, in western Victoria, and then went across Bass Strait in the middle of New Zealand, and there. So Flinders Island, might be easier if I point it out here. Flinders Island was over here, and the northern part of Tasmania down here. So the observations were carried out actually over a length of about 12 kilometres. I think there's a more detailed map that shows Flinders Island in a bit more detail. So one of the observers, David Heale, was just slightly north of the northern limit line. He observed many Bailey's beads, got a lot of timings, and there were two others were situated roughly about here, and I was down somewhere about here. The distance between us was the order of about 12 kilometres or so. So I was the one who was furthest inside the northern limit. I was about 12 kilometres inside the northern limit. My wife and grandson, they were down at Lady Barron, so they were something like about 25 kilometres inside the limit, and they observed it just using a pinhole in a piece of cardboard, and they saw it quite well. Apparently a number of the other people in the motel looked on as well, so we were spread out a bit. Now, people down in the southern part of Tasmania, you'll be able to get that very bit fuzzy on that side, isn't it? Yes, well, the southern limit was this line through here. Hobart was actually outside the southern limit, but you would have got almost an eclipse there, almost an annular eclipse, but not quite. But you had to get a little bit north of Hobart to actually see an annular eclipse. So this just shows the path again. You can see it coming down across Western Australia, across Tasmania, up through New Zealand, and there it is again across there. And this next map shows the views that you would have had at the various sites around Australia and New Zealand. And you can see that in Melbourne, you didn't quite get an annular eclipse. If you were around about Devonport, Launceston, you would have got an almost perfect annulus. And down in Hobart, in fact, they didn't quite get as it's drawn there, because it would have been the moon would have been slightly outside the sun there. And this shows the main events where you get first contact as the moon first starts to bite into the sun, coming across from the west. Second contact is when these two, when the moon and the sun meet on this side. Third contact is on the other side, and there's something like about 6 minutes in between those if you're on the centre line. And fourth contact is, of course, the last event as the moon moves away. And this was just a list of various items of equipment with a memory jogger. There are all sorts of things down there you may want. Later this year, on the 11th of July, to go through the Hawaiian Islands, through Mexico, Central America, and through South America. And so happens that it's going to be a very long total eclipse, just the same as this eclipse in January. It was in effect the opposite. We had the moon appearing very small and the sun appearing very large, because the Earth was virtually closest to the sun in January, and the moon was almost at its maximum distance from us. In July, the situation is completely the opposite. So the sun is going to appear smaller, and the moon is going to appear much bigger. Now, I should really be putting this on later, but seeing we've got the overhead going, I'll put it on now. When I was over on Flinders Island, as well as trying to time the bailey's beads, I also had a thermometer and a light meter, and I took readings right through from the beginning of the eclipse, which was actually here. The centre of the eclipse was about there, and I didn't go right through the fourth contact, which was about there. But it gives you an idea. This top line is the variation in temperature, air temperature. It dropped from about 16 down to about 13 or so, which occurred just after mid-eclipse, and then started to come up again fairly rapidly. And the light intensity did drop, but nowhere near as much as you get for a total eclipse when it comes way down and then comes up again. But there was always quite a bit of sunlight there, even at mid-eclipse on this occasion. Right, well, I think we'll switch that off and we'll put the projector on now. We can open some of them in. Open that here.
Good.
Yes, thanks. Well, this is just some of the. I'll leave that with a minute. This is the. So you can press the button for it. I'll give you the answer if you want. Just go ahead. You can sit down. Sit down. Yeah, just go press the button. Not yet. Just give it a quick press, not a long one. Okay. Right. Well, this is just to show you some of the circumstances of both the total solar eclipse and an annular eclipse. This is the total solar eclipse. On this, in this instance, you have the moon relatively close to the Earth, or the sun is relatively a fair way away from the Earth, and so the moon appears to be bigger than the sun, and it casts a shadow which would actually, the point of the cone would actually be inside the Earth somewhere, but because you can't see that, that's impossible. So in fact you get a band of, as the moon moves, you get a band of totality going across the Earth. Now, the next one, please, Ron. Right. In the case of an annular eclipse, and I'm sorry, this is a negative, the other one doesn't really matter though. It's the same sort of diagram, but on this occasion, the moon is, if you like, further away, or the sun is a bit closer, or you've got a combination of the two. And in that case, this cone doesn't actually meet the Earth. So the rays, in fact, cross over. And when you get on a spot on the Earth between those two dashed lines, you'll find that there's a ring of light around the moon. The moon doesn't quite cover the sun. And so that's the difference between them when you look at it from that point of view. Now, with the total eclipse, as we've just said, the moon more than covers the sun, and so as it's moving across relative to the sun, it'll cover it for a varying time depending on those varying distances between the Earth and the sun and the Earth and the moon. And as I mentioned earlier, in July this year, the moon is going to be a lot bigger than the sun, and so as it moves across, it's going to be some minutes before it actually comes across and the sun's light comes out again. Now, during a total eclipse, you can see the beautiful corona, which is very faint, and you can't see it under normal daylight conditions. And if we move on to the top, and you can also see the prominences. This would be a much shorter exposure than the previous one. These prominences can be very beautiful as well. Now, with an annular eclipse, if we go on, please, Ron. And before we move on to the annular eclipse, if you're looking at a total eclipse, just before totality, you get the sun like this with the two horns they're not diametrically opposite. In other words, you've only got a fairly short crescent. It doesn't wind right around, doesn't come right around the moon. But if we move on now to the next shot, these are a few shots taken of an annular eclipse that occurred over in Greece a few years back. And you'll notice on that occasion, of course, that the moon is much smaller than the sun. You've got quite a ring of light around the sun. So it's a bit like the circumstances we had in January. And the other thing is that if you take this example here, when you've got roughly about the same amount of sun there as you had in the shot a couple of shots ago, where we only had a very short crescent. On this occasion, because the moon is so much smaller, the two horns of the crescent come right around and they virtually meet. Well, they do meet up here. You can't get that sort of situation with a total eclipse. It's impossible. But because the moon is so much smaller, these crescents, or the horns of the crescent, come whipping around and eventually join up. Now, one thing you can observe on this shot here, we have what are known as Bailey beads, and the main purpose of going to the northern limit was to try and time these Bailey beads appearing and disappearing. And these events, when you're at the either northern or the southern limit, these events go on for minutes, quite a few minutes. If you're on the centre line, and I asked Ian Sullivan about this because he was very close to the centre line, he didn't notice any Baily's beads. They can occur, but because the moon is moving straight across in that direction, if any Baily's beads occur, they quickly vanish. But if the moon's moving in this direction, but it happens to be further north, so it's coming along here, this limb is coming along there, it's going more or less tangent to the sun, and these events can occur one after the other for quite a long time. So that's one of the differences. So if you're wanting to check on the diameter of the sun, you need to first of all have people at this limit and also people down at the other limit, and the moon will appear to either go across here or across there depending on which limit you're at. Thanks, Bob. Now, with any type of eclipse, either the annular eclipse or total eclipse or partial eclipse, or even just observing the sun from day to day, one of the safest ways to do it is to project the image of the sun from the telescope onto a sheet of white cardboard, and that was taken all the way back about 30 years ago in Malone when we had a partial solar eclipse down there. And it was using, I think, a 6-inch telescope at the time. Thanks, Bob. We've already had a look at this, but that's just showing the path again. Now, just while I'm on it, we had a lot of observers on Flinders Island, a lot of observers in Tasmania. Unfortunately, they were clouded out around the Hobart area or north of Hobart. As far as I know, no one at the southern limit there was able to get any observations. They were clouded out in New Zealand, and we haven't really heard much from Western Australia. So at the moment, we've got a lot of good results from the northern limit on Flinders Island, and nothing much else to go with it. So we can't really use those results until we find out if anyone else has got observations at the southern limit. Okay, next one. Well, that's once again showing what we had on the overhead before. That's just pointing out where Devonport is, and Ian Sullivan's shots were taken, as you can see, very close to the centre line, and the other shots you'll see are taken very close to the northern limit. Thanks, Bob. Right, well now this is taken on Flinders Island. It looks a pretty dilapidated old building. But this was the site that I was at on Walker's Lookout, which is I think about roughly 1,400 feet in height. Anyway, it's quite mountainous in that area. There's quite a range of hills going through there. And that old building was actually an old telecom building. They had a diesel power station there. They used to have their transmitters there to send their telephone signals from Flinders Island across to what do you call it, Wilson Promontory in Victoria. And now they've shifted that site. It's a bit further north on Flinders Island. They've closed all that down. But anyway, I was able to drive right up the road, right to the very top of that mountain. I was one of the lucky ones. A couple of the others had to lug all their equipment up on their backs or getting people to help them. So I was able to drive up with, we had this hire car, and I could drive right to the site, no worries at all. So that was actually taken the day before the eclipse. It was a bit hazy that day, as you can see, a bit of cloud around. The day the eclipse was actually very good. There wasn't much cloud at all. Thanks, Bob. That's just a view from that lookout. That's the remains of the old telecom tower. And this is a bit of the road going again. Actually, I drove up there with my wife and grandson the day before. And when we went to drive down again, they were so scared when they saw that road. They got out of the car and they wouldn't come down with me. They walked about the first quarter of a mile or so till we got down into the wooded area. They reckon I'd go over the edge. But if you've ever driven around the Tregaskis, as I know Ken has, well, it's a piece of cake up there. But that's actually looking out to sea right out there. It's pretty hazy that day, but there are a few little islands. There are stacks of islands around Flinders Island. Down there is quite flat. The town of Whitemark, the main town, is, that might be it there. It's over that direction anyway. Thanks, Bob. It's really the only town on the island of any size at all. most of these towns that are marked on the map, when you get there, you can't find anything. There might be one house. It's certainly not even in North Bar. So you've got to take all your supplies with you. That's looking out towards the northwest. Once again, it's a bit hazy. But to give you an idea of the island, it's very rugged, but then there are some very flat areas. In fact, over towards the right, it's quite swampy, over towards the northeast of the island. Thanks, Ross. Right, well, I took over my little 4-inch reflector that some of you saw last Saturday night. But I normally have it mounted up on a Ponce mounting, which is a bit like the Dobsonian mounting. On this occasion, I pruned it down to make it as light as possible. This is all aluminium tubing. You can lift that up with your little finger, it's so light, that mounting. And it's made up out of car parts, etc. And the rest of it's made up out of bits of light timber. Because I was restricted in luggage to 15 kilograms. So I had the telescope and tape recorder. I found the smallest one I could, and a little radio, which turned out didn't work too well over there, but I was able to borrow one from Jim Blanksby, who had a spare one with him, so I thought I'd use the ASF radio to pick up BNG, get the time signals. Anyway, that was set up on top of the hill, and that was, I suppose about 20 minutes or so after the start of the eclipse. Now the moon comes across from the west, across the sun, moves towards the east. So I've actually marked it on the west, north, south and east. For the projected image, of course, you get your north and south, or your east and west reversed, compared to looking through the telescope. Thanks, Rob. Oh, there's one thing to notice is, if you look at these early shots, the ground is quite bright, the grass is quite bright. I used exactly the same exposure right through, so the sun will be much the same right through, but you'll see that the ground will get darker as we go on. Thanks. It's getting a little bit darker now. You can see that the grass is a little bit darker than it was. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Bob. And now we're getting quite close to the mid-eclipse, and you can see that the moon has been coming across in this direction, and it's not going across centrally, it's quite obvious, but it's going to, the two edges are going to be almost tangent along the southern, this is south here, along the southern edge, because I'm at the northern limit, so I'm looking over the northern rim of the moon at the sun. And people down near Hobart would find the moon up there, maybe getting the wide part down here. Okay. Now that's mid-eclipse, and there appears to be, well, from here anyway, quite a wide rim of light around there. In fact, it was very, very narrow. You tend to get a bit of spreading on the photograph, I guess. But there is a suggestion of some dark marks there, which would be the mountains on the moon. And in fact, there were quite a number of, well, I recorded about 3 dozen Barley Feeds events before this and also after, particularly after the eclipse. Now you'll notice in that shot how dark the ground is, and the exposures haven't been very at all. This scratch, I think, occurred when I sent the slide in to get some copy done, and they scratched this one. Very, very annoyed about that. Thanks, Bob. Okay, well, this is taken some time later. The moon, of course, is moving in this direction, so it's now moving away, and I think there might be one more, is there? No, yes, we'll keep going there. You can see the ground getting brighter now, and the sun is still the same. Thanks, Bob. Right, well, they were all the shots that I took there, and now we've got the shots that I borrowed from Ian Sullivan, and he's put down the details there. You can see the first, second, third, fourth contacts there, the times, and so the middle of the eclipse was around about 9:23 in the morning. It was roughly the same time as Flinders Island. There wasn't very much difference at all. And over 6 minutes, 97 minutes of actual annularity. So that doesn't mean to say you get a perfect circle all the time, as you'll see. And the sun, of course, was never fully obscured because there was always a ring of light around the moon. Okay, yeah. Right, now that's Ian Sullivan. Some of you have met Ian. And by the way, those who are intending to do this course for demonstrators, if anyone does it, Ian's the bloke who'll be running it, so that's what he looks like. He's got a little Questar, which is a nice little portable instrument. He's carted that all over the place with him. In this occasion, he's shooting the light straight through the telescope and getting the crescent of the sun there. And he can also shoot the light up through here, and he can put a camera on there. And quite a lot of the shots you'll see have been taken with the camera through a filter as well. So thanks, Bob. We'll move on. That's his friend. He had a friend in Devonport, just demonstrating the same thing. And actually, there's a fence there. I think there was another photo he had of a telecom tower. So they're up the top of the hill, and telecom, I think, were behind that fence there. Thanks. This is demonstrating the pinhole effect, although it's pretty hard to see back there, I think. But you get a piece of cardboard with a pinhole in it, and I don't know which dot is the pinhole. Anyway, there is obviously a very small white dot in the centre, but my wife assured me that it worked quite well for her and the grandson. They were able to see the eclipse quite well from Lady Barron, using the same method. Right, well, this is one of his shots through the telescope, and you can see some pretty good sunspots there. That's a nice one there, and another big one there, and a few others scattered around as well. So that was taken fairly early in the piece. If we just move on, I think through them log, and I'll allow someone to stop. You can see, just hold there, you can see how these two cusps come around and virtually wrap right around the moon as it progresses. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, look at the colour there now. That's very close, just after second contact. Second contact, of course, would have occurred up here somewhere. There's just a suggestion of Bailey beads there, but if there's been any Bailey beads to see, it would have been a few seconds before that, I would say. Thanks, Bob. Right, well that I think was the one that was closest to central. I don't know if that's focused too well. It's almost dead centre. I think it's a little bit wider at the bottom than it is at the top. But he wasn't exactly on the centre line. He was a few kilometres south of the centre line. Right. As you can see, of course, there's still a tremendous amount of light from the sun. This is taken just after third contact. So you just missed Bailey Twins again there. And of course, it goes on, so you can just flip through that. There are the sunspots back again, so I don't think they're blind, I think they're actually spots.
I'm going to say now it's a sunspot or a speck on the film.
No, sunspots. There might be one or two specks, but they were sunspots.
They were sunspots.
And then there was a bit in the local paper the next day, that's a little bit funny. A bit in the local paper about it. They had mixed fortunes. Well, as we know, the people in northern Tasmania saw it pretty well. The people in the southern part were clouded out pretty well. Oh, this was Ian had a few other shots in his box of slides, and I didn't show them all tonight, but I was rather amused with this. This was obviously somewhere up in northern Tasmania. You probably can't read at the back, but it says nowhere else. Prior to the Nowhere Else Road becoming a through road, it ended at the farm property of Mr. Charles Ivory, who used to advise travellers that the road led to nowhere else. Then in the early 20th century, Mr. and they scrubbed his name out, MHA, when seeking money to continue construction of the road, referred to New Line to it in Parliament as the road leading to nowhere else. From then, New Line on wards, I'm not sure what that means exactly, it became known as Nowhere Else. There's Nowhere Else Road, and the area around Charles Ivory's farm is nowhere else. So there you are, you've seen nowhere else now. Right, well that's about all the slides. So there are some others now from some other people. So there's a video that we can put on shortly too. So yeah, we'll hang on. Really? That's right. Now, these were taken by Arthur, I think, weren't they, Arthur?
Yes.
Yes, perhaps you, that's about as good as I can get it, I think. Yes. Perhaps you'd like to comment on them then, Arthur?
Well,
Would you like to come up here?
I'll do it from here.
Right.
It's only a few words. Those of you who tried to see the eclipse from Frankston will remember it didn't get a glimpse of the sun until well after the centre point. Shortly after the centre point, that was about, maximum was about 8:30, about 9:30 summertime, I think. We started to get just a few occasional glimpses through heavy cloud, light cloud, and I don't think any blue sky at all for the whole period. But I did, through the telescope, I did manage to get a few windows, mainly through heavy cloud, light cloud, and just those occasional glimpses, and I just shot them whenever I got the chance. That first one was just after totality, or just after. I should mention that in Frankston the eclipse wasn't total, it was off the centre line, so you never saw that complete ring of light around the image of the moon. That was a little after totality. The next one, how do we move on? The next one was a bit further after it. And from there on, there were about 3 or 4, which are gradually, as the moon was moving away, that's getting a bit further away.
I go too fast, Arthur, yell out.
Bum?
I go too fast, yell out.
I'm sorry, what's that?
If I go too fast, yell out.
Oh yes, that's right. No, you can go, just run them straight through now.
Okay.
That's getting fairly close.
You see the sun's right, anyway.
Yes, and that's just when the moon is almost off. I think that's the last one, isn't it? Yes, it is, yes. Well, those were all taken through the telescope. They were taken on black and white 400 ASA film with quite a variety of exposures from 500th of a second to 50th of a second, and I stopped down the front lens and used filters. And that's about
Oh, this series was taken from northern Victoria.
Go back. You have to press it hard and longer. That's it. No.
Going forward here.
That's the first one.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're right.
They were taken from up northern Victoria, and I had a perfect viewing day for it, not a crowd all day. And these shots were taken every 20 minutes. And there again is the sunspots you spoke about just now. Keep going, Bob.
What's the line across the image?
Oh, that's just a crosshair in my eyepiece.
Oh, right. Thank you.
That's it.
I think there's one more there, isn't there?
That's one of mine.
That's one of yours.
That's just a blank.
Oh, sorry. Right. So that's the one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for that, all those. Now, we'll shut this down. Have the light on a sec, please. Good. And we've now got a video. I hope it works. I think it will. And this video was taken by Jim Blanksby of the ASF. He was on one of the other hills on Flinders Island, and he thought, well, if we're going to time these Bailey's bees, it'd be a good idea to use a video. So he did that, but this video goes for about an hour, so I'm not going to play it all. Just give you a few samples. We tried to edit it yesterday, and we got into all sorts of strife. We tried to make about a 5-minute edited copy, but it didn't work, did it, Steve? So we've had to right now. I can't find my play, Marshall. I've got to, oh, here we are. I found it. Right.
Fast forward.
Okay, well, Jim had this set up on his telescope, and he's getting an image about, as you can see, about 4 or 5 inches diameter, and it was quite a good image. Now, you can hear the VNG type signals. We're all using shortwave radios tuned to VNG, and we're picking up on one frequency, and then part of the way through the jolly eclipse they shut that transmitter down, so we had to swing over to another one. Luckily we were able to pick it up on another frequency, all right, so we carried on regardless. But Jim hasn't got much in the way of comments, just occasionally you'll hear him saying something. So I think we'll whip on now until we get nearer to the mid-eclipse, and there are certainly a few more comments there, because when the beads started to appear, Jim got a bit excited, and I think we all did. And I know I was flat out trying to describe what was going on. In fact, I've got it on tape recorder there. I can play a little bit of it later if you want to hear it. So it takes a long time even going fast forward for that moon to move across in front of the sun. Yeah, anyway, you can see the whole eclipse in fast motion rather than slow motion.
Gives it a rather good effect.
Yeah. Sorry you're getting all that broken bit across, but nevertheless, I think you can get the idea fairly well. Well, when it gets on a little bit, I'll let it go at normal speed, and you'll hear the commentary. But I don't think you get very much until within a minute or so of mid-eclipse. Now, where I was, and I think the others found the same, we didn't get many Bailey beads events before mid-eclipse. We got a tremendous number after mid-eclipse. It tended to be far more. And I think it was mainly because of the way the mountains on the moon are located. And you can see those two horns coming around now.
Slow down there,
All right. Oh, how do we stop the thing?
yeah, just put it back on the play. Push the play button.
No, I don't know which play button on this one. Right.
Yeah.
How do we vary the volume?
You can't.
You can't.
You turn it on,
On the TV set you can.
on the top. Where the hell it is. Which one is it? I can't see it. Turn the lights on a sec. Slide, isn't it? On the top centre.
Oh, this one, right. You hear it now?
Yeah.
First one's looking merge. First detected break. Still detected break. And the second one is still there. Other cusp is moving around.
Now you won't see all the events that he is recording because
Still first.
the video didn't pick them all up.
Other cusp is swinging fast now. Still 2 beats on the left. On the slow one. Still on the slow.
Some of those beats are very faint, so they may not have shown up on the video, but you will see some
One of
beats
them,
shortly.
I think there's one of them fast moving. No, it's disappeared.
Caused by mountains on the moon or
Yeah,
the sun.
Moon mountains, the alleys on the moon. Yeah.
And another one just about forming on the slow. And on that. But the first one's elongated, the second one is elongated. Corrections, the second one elongated. Or a tiny bead just above the second. And yes, 2 beats on the first one. But they've merged now. there is still 2 bees, and the second one is definitely growing, so it's 2 or 3. So I have to call it 2 now. It's the top business has merged. Oh, I think the gill seems to be there on the slow one. Yes, another beat on the slow. Another beat on the slow. Fair way up. And on the...
It'd be hard to see them.
And one on the start. Got on the start. And on the start. No, sorry, so... Yeah, got 2 away from the car. Another one, oh, in the middle, yes, another long one in the middle. And on the slow one, something between the third and the other. Yes, another one in between 2 at the top. And a long one, another one about the personal hand, yes. So we're still, oh, we're really, yes, ready. So, on the top cusp is 1 long bead, a long, then a break, a long bead, break, so a short bead, a long, and
Very hard to describe all these.
on the slow one, that first bead, another bead on the slow, down below, yes, and the moon's moving through.
You see these bees going for a long time when you hear the limits, but if you're on the centre line, you just see a few like that, they'll be there for seconds, then you go on.
Nigel, yes, so it's 1, 2, 3 on the low one now, and there's the first shot. We've got now, it's 1 between on the phone, and it's about saying it's gone. So now, and then maybe another one to the bottom, and it's gone. The top is 1 fading, the top fading, on the top, so there's still the top, and there's 2 definitely at the top, 2 definitely at the top, 2 definitely at the top, nothing at the bottom, at the top, the first one's fading, the bottom one's fading, gone, the second, the one left at the top.
We won't give him the job of describing the next one.
Well, you don't get much practice of this, that's no trouble.
Yeah, we got to talk to the guy and he wouldn't go either.
Disappearing. Still there, gone.
I think most of the events have probably occurred.
Fast forward the right hand one of it.
That's it, yeah. Well, we'll move on now. He eventually wrapped up before the last contact, and he went off to one of the other sites to see how Pat Larkin was getting on. And she had quite a few young people who she picked up on the way, more or less, who helped her. And Jim took some shots at that site, so when we get to that, I'll stop it on that for a while. You can have a look at what's going on there. There was a bit of hilarity by then because the event was virtually all over, and Pat was just waiting there to time the last contact. Although according to David Heale, he says it's a waste of time timing the first and the last contact as far as he's concerned. All he wanted was timings and feeds. And I had to run my tape through later. I've got it in there now, but and I had to record all the stuff off the tape, and I've got pages and pages here of all the comments on the bees. So I think there are about 3 dozen timings that I managed to get. But unfortunately, if David doesn't get any other results from anyone from the southern limit, and all these air flights to Flinders Island and all the setting up of equipment and all the timing and so on, it's all gone for naught because you can't measure the diameter of the sun if you've only got measurement on one side. You've got to get the other side as well.
Get an idea from that, Bruce, from the diameter of the moon versus the sun, but a bit of...
No, but so you want to get a measurement across the diameter, and all the measurements that we took were only on one side of the sun. All those timings were on one side of the sun, and he was wanting timings from the other side, which would have been down near Hobart, for example. And even if he got something from New Zealand, although there's a difference in language, he reckoned he could make compensation for that and get something out of it. You can see some of the sunspots are reappearing now. In fact, there's a few of them there. Yeah.
There's a fairly big clump on that day.
Yeah, you see them on naked eye.
Yeah. Yes, there's on Monday also there was quite a large clump of sunspots on. There's still a great deal of solar activity.
Did anybody watch
This week, yeah, that's right.
Did anybody watch the World 2000 last night? They had a good one about the sun.
For a little bit of it, yeah.
I saw, I've got that recorded from a prior program.
Have you?
Yeah.
Same thing.
So very much about the blackout of Quebec and sun comments on.
Measuring something there. Takes a long time moving it on the fast forward, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think he gives it away fairly soon now. So there's a bit of a break.
It runs only for 5 minutes.
Oh, I see.
On that fast forward time.
I didn't think I'd pressed it.
No. It turns itself back on the river and runs the same ahead.
Ah, there we are. Right. Well, that was Pat Larkin. Oh, yeah. So what's going wrong there?
You still got it on high speed. You still got it on fast forward, bro.
Oh, gosh, sorry. I thought I'd stopped it. Wow.
It's on about 50 seconds on a replay.
Which is already
Extreme left.
Grant left, isn't it? That one?
Yeah, that'll run it back. Yeah. Right, now, when you go a little bit more, you can hit your play button again then. When you go.
That was David Harold.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all met up there.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, hit your play button.
Now, play.
The middle one.
Oh, middle one. Right. Over to right now. No, I'm seven.
Wait till
You put your come back in the other one temporarily.
22:50.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah.
There's Pat Larkin.
See the shadow out.
These are some of the young helpers.
Yeah.
There you go.
Or the family if we
Yeah. Well, she didn't know that before she went over there.
Like a school group.
Yeah, they were camping, I think, in a reserve nearby. That's David Harold, the one in the blue shirt and the beard. He was the main organiser. He organised the trip over to Hawaii in July as well. To see the eclipse over there.
I couldn't have had it set up right.
Showing the sunspots.
Oh,
Very hard to get a meaningful contact.
Yeah, I think that's there's a bit of there. Very close to fourth contact.
Still there, Josh? Time to be active for a couple of seconds. Still there.
Getting a bit of cloud to make it hard.
Still there, John.
Yeah, well, I was very lucky I got no play at the
Oh, you should have stayed in
Oh,
the
yeah, it's on about
In where are they?
take a minute. 50 seconds. Well, that's about right. 54. Right.
No, what's happened
No,
was,
he's trying to work the controls to roll back a bit so they can have another look at Yeah.
when we brought this tape there, they didn't have a TV set because they were staying either in sort of camping type facilities or Jim was in a hotel in White Park, but it was like our old Victorian hotels. no real facilities, and
This is
you
Mark
came down
standing
to our
on a
hotel
rock.
in the evening and played all this through.
At Trick Station 160 and a hand.
Well, we're all right beside these trig stations, by the way.
Patricia
So
Slide.
get accurate positions on the air.
Accurate fixing.
Just how far she is from the station. In which direction?
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Right. We have the lights on, please.
Yeah. Hit the stop button, Bruce.
Right.
Otherwise you get some funny movies.
We'll be in the paper. What do you mean by that, Steve? Well, I didn't mind it. We had one down the airport one night.
Yes, well, I didn't have a video. I merely had.
Yes.
Where are we? To the front play button. Yes. I'll just play that for a few seconds. But I was doing the same thing using this tape recorder, and I had a radio going beside me, and I was just commenting on what I was seeing. So it's exactly the same sort of setup. Well, this was just after mid-eclipse, and then there was a whole stack of events that occurred just after that. Just to give you an idea, that went on and on and on, of course. And I finished up after I played it all through and we typed it all out. There's pages and pages out there. Okay, so that winds that up. Are there any queries, or has anyone else got any comments to make about the eclipse?
Just generally, how do they use the Bailey speeds calculated on looking at it from either side?
Yeah, well, there are charts of the moon, and that's a typical one. This chart lines up with the day of the eclipse, and the mountains on the moon have been highly exaggerated on that chart. All those wiggles around the edge are the actual surface of the moon, but enlarged about 5 or 10 times or something in the radial direction to exaggerate all the mountains and valleys on the moon. Now, David Heale has a computer program which can, in effect, interpret all these valleys and hills and marry them in with the observations that come in, the times of observations. And don't ask me how he does it, but he's able to get observations from, say, this side of the moon and that side of the moon, all the timings, and by running through the computer program, eventually work out the diameter of the sun from it. But I don't know how it's done.
So Bruce, could you say that the Bailey speeds really is light shining through the valley?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Are the beads of spots of light or the spots of dark?
Well, the beads are the spots of light, and if you have the complete ring of light around the, so say it's in the middle of the eclipse, and as the moon moves out, first of all, some of the hills will start to reach the edge of the sun, and you'll get some breaks in the edge. And so you'll just get perhaps one dark line across, and then when you get another one, you'll get an actual bead forming.
Oh, I
The
see.
bead is the bright light left. Yeah. So then as more mountains
the
move
dark
across,
spots.
well, I suppose you can look at it either way.
That's right,
Whatever
yeah.
they're interpreting
You're interpreting it as the beads as being the light in the valley rather than the black spots of the mountains.
And because they know the configuration of the moon very accurately,
Yes.
it gives them an accurate
That's
measure.
right, yeah. These are called Watts charts, and there's a whole, I don't know how many there's been, maybe 50 or 100 of these charts, depending on the vibration or the movement of the moon. The moon, although we supposedly see the same face of the moon all the time, in fact we don't, because it does tend to wobble a bit this way and a bit that way. And so there's a whole host of different limbs that we see on the moon, but there's enough charts that have been drawn up so that they can in fact get a chart that will suit the occasion. And on this occasion, they picked the one that was for the 16th of January.
Oh, the moon isn't spinning on its own axis then?
Oh yes, yeah, it rotates once a month.
Yeah, that's right.
It's always the
That's
same
right.
phase because
But because its orbit is not perfectly circular, and for other reasons, the moon, in fact, does wobble slightly. You can see a little bit around the west edge or the east edge or the north or the south. But you can never see more than, I think it's what, 61% or something like that.
Its axis pointing at the Earth, is it?
Is what?
Is its axis pointing at the Earth?
No, its axis is it's like north-south.
Well, like the axis on which it's spinning, is its axis pointing at the Earth, or is it parallel to the Earth's axis?
It's roughly parallel to the Earth's axis.
Well, how come they say we can't see the dark side of the moon then, if it's spinning?
Because as it rotates on its axis, it's also revolving around the Earth, and the two of them just happen to coincide, and so
Got a very long day.
that's right. Yeah. And
does.
those days a month long. So
Yeah,
just
well,
like if I look at that piece of paper,
Yeah.
It's here as well as
if I turn it around there like that,
Yeah.
that piece of paper is turned around once,
Yes,
relative
yeah.
around up the back of the room.
Yeah.
But to me, it hasn't. I've seen
Yeah.
the same size.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Does that explain it?
I think so.
And it's rotated around that axis.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how do you get the exact time from that signal you were listening to? Oh, that was
Ah.
only 1/10 intervals, wasn't it? 1 second.
Yeah, 1 second intervals, yeah. Yeah, well I was able, well when you play it through, you can hear the second pips going, and when you yell out that something's happened, you estimate it to, well, about 1/10 of a second if you can, somewhere between the two pips. But in fact, David, I think, claimed that he only needs to get it accurate to within about a second anyway. So if you're able to estimate it, in fact, I think most of mine, I went down. I only went to the nearest second, in fact, that's right, nearest second, yeah.
When your signal's coming through, it's got a coding in itself, hasn't it? That signal leading spots. When you're coming up to the minute, you've got certain categories.
Oh yes, well actually, to make it easier for myself, every now and again I kept saying, well the time is now, say 8:26 or 8:28, because
But you're getting that with the code on the sound of the signal.
oh
aren't
yeah,
you?
well I'll play it, and as you come up to a minute, when it comes up to a minute, on the 59th second there's no tone, it stops, and then on
But Bruce, I think the main point of reference is surely that every quarter of an hour there's an announcement.
yeah.
And we give, and you know the starting point, and from there on you count it.
Yeah. But if you've got a watch, which
Oh,
I
you
had,
can do it. Yeah.
and
You've got an accurate
you
watch,
know that's
yeah.
accurate, if you set that
Yeah.
to begin with, the easiest way I've found in going through the tape is to just mention every so often that it's such and such a time, and it
Yeah.
saves you playing it back to quarter of an hour.
Yeah. And if anybody queries it, they can just wait until there's an
Right, now
announcement.
listen now. Did you hear the break then? You just get ticks for the
That's
last...
every minute, is it?
Yeah, every minute. That's right.
That's how it picks it up, Jerry. You've got your
Yeah.
timing, and that's why I say there's a code built into those pips. Virtually a break before on the 59th. It's just a very
There's no,
and then it's
So you've got to have a stopwatch as well
no.
with that.
No, you simply make your comments onto the tape with the radio going as well. In fact, you can get some radios, I've got one at home, which not only picks up the signal, but will also record at the same time from the microphone, so you just superimpose the two. But in this case, I just had this little tape recorder and I had a separate radio nearby, so that it was coming through the microphone as well. But it was quite adequate, and when I played it back, I was able to get all the results there quite readily to a second.
So you're counting each of those pips, are you? So
Oh
you
yes,
say-
as I went through when I was
Yeah.
typing this out. Well, actually I wrote it out first, but I had to carefully go through, and once or twice I'd forget. I'd have to go back. There was about an hour or so's actual tape there, and it took me all day, I think, to do that. It was a lot of work. I wouldn't like to wish it on anyone. When I suggested to David I send the tape up to him, he said, no, he said, you got to. He got caught before. Right, any more queries or comments? Well, otherwise,
send your typed up version to David?
did I hear? Yeah. That's the idea, yeah.
Order is being correct.
There's one thing I'm going to say. A total solar eclipse, that would show Bailey's beads up even better, wouldn't it?
Well, not necessarily so, but once again, with a total solar eclipse, to get the best effect from Bailey's beads, you need to be at the northern and southern limits.
Yeah.
And if you get the northern and southern limits, you'll get a very short totality. So what they usually do, they creep a bit, they get inside the limits a little bit, so they get the best of both worlds. But in fact, back in 1976, if we'd been outside this room here, we would have been virtually right on the southern limit. I just happened to come across this today when I was cleaning up outside, and this is a map, it was a copy of the map that was brought out in 1976, which shows the path of the total eclipse across Victoria. That was the date on the 23rd of October 1976. And if you look at that map there, you'll find the southern limit virtually goes through the school grounds, or very, very close to it anyway, so pass that around. So you would have seen lots of Bailey's beads here if it had been clear on that day. In fact, those of us who went up to Carrum Downs, quite a number of us did, found it was very cloudy. We didn't see much at all, but some people, of course, did see the eclipse fairly well on that occasion, depending on where they were.
So, Bruce, there is some advantage in actually going to Flinders Island on this particular occasion.
Oh, yes, I picked that out.
Because you've got more of the Bailey's beads down there
That was the idea.
than you would with the total eclipse.
We got more Bailey's beads on Flinders Island than Ian Sullivan got at Devonport. I asked him yesterday, I said, did you see any Bailey's beads? He said, well, frankly, no. He said, I was interested in taking the photos, and he said, I didn't even notice the Bailey's beads, but he would have only seen them for a very brief period because the moon's limb and the sun's limb met in this direction, whereas the way I saw it, they were going that direction. And so the event went on for quite a long time. The Bailey's beads went on for a good 5-10 minutes where I was, whereas Ian would have only seen them for seconds either side. And the same happens with a total eclipse. If you're right on the centre line, you can forget about seeing Bailey's beads. You might see one or two if you're lucky. You get a diamond ring effect. That is a Bailey's bead when you see a diamond ring.
With the total eclipse, you went to northern and southern limits. You get something pretty similar to what you got this time.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Right, any other queries? Well, if not, did everyone manage to see the membership list, type membership list?
No.
Because
Never saw it.
Because there was another
They've all
sheet
been in the
with-
way.
Yeah, I was wondering.
I've got the...
I've been over here.
Yeah, there's two
I
sheets.
didn't see that.
You wouldn't mind checking it over?
Over near Broome, I saw it.
Right. Anyway, if you'd all like to just check that before you go and just make any comments or any alterations if there are any mistakes on the list, and then we'll have an up-to-date list. And that means that hopefully you all get your newsletters. Okay?
Is
All right.
this going to be on the show or something?
I just want to thank you for the talk tonight. If everyone knows your expertise on solar astronomy, so to speak, and variable stars, but I thought it was a good talk and I learned a little bit tonight, so thanks very much.
Thanks for those comments, David. Right. Anyone else got any announcements before we wind up? Oh, yes, Peter.
Just like to look